Guess we can just go. Going live. And I've hit record.
I've also hit record. Oh, a WAV is flapping around.
Oh, we're waving. All right.
Flapping.
I'm looking at GeekNights from a slightly different camera angle from normal, which is part of my opening bit.
No, because you moved all the stuff.
I did move all the shit. Also, I got a problem with my computer now.
Uh-oh.
Unrelated to the moving. It's really funny. It's not a real problem. It's Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is GeekNights. Tonight, we are talking about Heaven's Vault. So, for a bunch of reasons, the way the room that I record GeekNights in, where Emily and I use it as our working space during the day, the desks were kind of cornered to each other for a bunch of reasons, just the way we set up the room. And I rearranged all that over the weekend because Emily has a brand new, ridiculously powerful computer, and we wanted to make the right room.
It's not that powerful. It's my power computer is probably faster because that one doesn't have a GPU in it.
It has a 770 in it.
Okay.
We got that 7070 back.
I have a 1070. My 1070 is probably more powerful. But...
Yeah, the problem is it depends on what you're doing with it. We got 10 cores at up to 5.7 gigahertz.
Yeah, but I mean, if we played Star Wars Squadrons, I'd probably get more frames.
I find, actually, so get this, Star Wars Squadrons, full frames in Steam VR index, like no problems. If I put it on a monitor, my 1080 gets full frames if I run it at 1080p. But if I run it higher than that at 4K, the GPU doesn't max out. The CPU does for some reason.
That's interesting.
I found that Star Wars, every time I get a stutter at all, which is rare, it's the CPU maxing out, and I'm not sure why. Something I noticed.
It's something slightly related and interesting, right? So I opened up Adobe Premiere to do some videos, testing stuff I was doing. And it's the first time I had used Premiere since getting the 4K monitor. And what was happening was I was playing a 4K video in Premiere, just like in the, the source import player, right? And it was choppy as hell. I'm like, well, that makes sense. I will make some proxies. And I made the proxies, and it was still choppy as hell. And I'm like, what the fuck? Why is this choppy as hell? Because I was able to do that. My computer hardware hasn't changed, and I've been able to watch 4K videos in perfectly. It's like, why would the monitor change the performance of the, right? Yeah. And sure enough, I dragged the Premiere window over. Literally, it's running, it's playing a video, and I'm dragging the window. And the window itself can't even move. It's moving very choppily.
Whoa.
Right? And as soon as I get the window over to the old monitor with lower resolution, it starts playing beautifully. And the window moves smoothly. And I'm like, what is it doing on this left monitor? Yeah. That is some... But I was able to get help from the Adobe community forum. Apparently, there's a feature called Mercury Transport. It's because there's if you want a Premiere to use your GPU, you enable the Mercury playback engine, right? So I have that enabled. Yeah. You don't disable that.
No. That is real important.
Right? But there's a related feature, Mercury Transport, and what that does is it basically lets you use another monitor as like a full screen display, right? Of like preview instead of using like the little things, right? So you could just like, if you're a video guy, you could, you could have a bunch of extra monitors attached and be like, yeah, just show this full on that monitor, right?
Yep.
And do your editing on maybe a monitor that's not so expensive, right? You need your timelines. You don't need high fancy graphics just to see, some waves and stuff, right? Yep. You just need the good color representation where you're actually watching the video.
But you also want it to be completely full screen and not just like another Premiere window over there with like some widgets in it.
So apparently the solution, and I'm not saying it worked, the solution, but it's questionable about the quality. What's going on. I had the Mercury Transport feature, somehow the checkbox to enable the feature was enabled, but obviously none of the monitors were configured to actually transport anything, right? And that was what was causing it. As soon as I completely disabled Mercury Transport completely, it worked beautifully on all both monitors.
I was going to blame the metadata.
I wasn't using it anyway, but it's like, why was just having it on causing that to happen?
So moving all the redoing this whole room was a giant pain in the ass, but I like ran cable channels and everything's like nice and organized and it feels real good. The room's nice and symmetric. I moved the printer out of the way because that printer's so big it doesn't fit anywhere in this room.
Do you even print stuff?
Yeah, you know what I print? Character sheets, in
You're
non-COVID
playing games
times.
online these days. Why
Yeah,
did you print the
someday we will be post-COVID, and I'll be playing Blades in the Dark in person again.
Someday.
That day will come.
Sure.
So everything's set, and Emily's computer is, other than the GPU situation, which we all know about, it's just a ridiculously powerful, amazing computer. And my computer feels a little weak compared to it, which is fine. My computer's running like a champ, even though I built it in like
Dude, does what
2016.
I need to do. It's only slow when there's a bug in Adobe software.
Yep. The only thing hurting my computer right now, up until this morning, was I can't get a video card to replace that 1080. So this morning I wake up, and I've not done anything to my computer, mind you. I've only done things to the left half of the room. Like, my computer did not physically move at any point during all this.
Mhm.
And I hear a bunch of loud clicking coming from the computer room. And my first thought is, oh shit, we fucked something up on the new computer. Oh no. I hope the pump isn't broken. And we gotta come in, and my computer that has not been touched is making the loud clicking. I'm assuming the Kraken has finally given up the ghost, because it does not sound like a fan problem. But the computer is booted and working.
Yeah, there's no other moving parts in computers these days, right? And I guess I have magnetic drives still, but
I do, and I was worried about that a little bit, but I got
they don't
raid and
spin up though unless I do something. They just
Yeah.
sit there unspun. So
If
they
I don't
make
touch the
noise
S
if I'm
drive-
not sitting at the computer.
like if I'm recording GeekNights, those drives are spinning because GeekNights gets recorded to them because they are in a RAID 0. RAID 1. Anyway, so they're redundant. So I poke around a little bit, and basically I open up all the bits on my computer. Not one of my fans has failed, but one fan failed so badly that it's like off axis and slamming into the sides. So I just shoved some shims in there to prevent it from spinning. But I
Just take it out.
because it's in my Kraken, and I don't have a replacement for it. So I just blocked it. I didn't want to unplug it because I have to actually take like more panels of my case off to get to the thing to unplug it.
My fans are just like on the front. I can just take them off.
My fans are inside of a filtering enclosure that has a Kraken like mounted to it and a push pull.
I mean, I have the same Kraken thing you do, I'm pretty sure. And it's just like the fans go in front of the radiator. They're not like, I can take them
Yeah,
off.
they're in front of the radiator. I can't take them out of the computer without removing the radiator because they are mounted to the inside front of my case, and there's a filter that mounts in front of them.
My filter is just a magnet. I just pop it out right
Yeah,
out.
it is just a magnet, but the fans cannot come out from the front.
Oh, anyway.
So anyway, auditing the fans in my case, I noticed that my top fan has been doing that thing where it just kind of spins like lazily because it's broken as well. And my rare fan,
Maybe you should call out whatever brand of fans you bought because apparently they're really shitty.
they're all the standard like Corsair, like the fan everyone fucking buys.
I'm pretty sure. What's the
$30 like Corsair Pro. I could get the
What's the really big
Nocturas to
fan
replace them, I
brand?
guess.
let me look at the best fan brand. Hold on. I
Seems
forget
like the
what
two best fans right now, unless you're going for ridiculous, stupid airflow, if you actually care about them being quiet, are the Nocturas or this one Corsair fan.
Oh yeah, the Noctua whatever.
Yeah, that
Noctua.
yeah, Noctua and Corsair are still like the top two.
Noctua is what I put in the HTPC because I wanted to get the quietest ones.
Yep. So right now I've unplugged one fan that's broken and prevented another fan that's broken from spinning, and I just ordered all new fans. I'm gonna replace every fan in my stupid computer.
That seems like a good idea. Yeah.
Yep. But that's the only thing that's going wrong with this computer, so I feel like I made the right call in terms of how I put that thing together.
Nothing's ever gone wrong with this computer.
Except the metadata.
Show. Yeah, that's like I said, bugs in the Adobe software. Nothing wrong with the computer itself.
So in the news, Daft Punk, the legend, at least for now, has ended. After 28 years, Daft Punk is no longer
news. Seriously, right?
I mean, I'm sure there's some kids out there who were like, "Oh, that's the music my dad listens to."
Maybe someone.
I feel like that breaking of like generational divides of music has not like that breakout is not as strong as it used to be, thanks to the long tail and
there's
streaming.
more there's no more, thanks to the democratization of media.
Yep.
Right?
Like when I was in middle school, if you listen to anything
of pop culture,
like in middle school, like going to the CD store, like everyone listened to pop, rock, alternative. There were weird like demarcations that were very strict, and only super nerds listened to anything else.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there is still music that is like mega hits, right? You got your BTSs, you got your Drakes, you got all these kinds of people, but It's not like those things, despite being mega hits, are only defining for a large but still, sort of limited, finite segment of the population. It's like, yes, those X million people over there, right? That has defined, whatever for them.
But
right?
like Michael Jackson, Freddie Mercury, inescapable.
You could play that song for someone else who's not in that bubble, right? Even though it's an enormous bubble. And they would be like, what the hell song is this? I never heard this song.
Yeah.
But if you go back to like the 90s and there were people who wore a Nirvana t-shirt and had, right? But if you just played Smells Like Teen Spirit, right? People who didn't own a Nirvana album or a t-shirt knew what fucking song that was.
Yep. They might not like it, but they recognized it.
Right. And that doesn't exist anymore, right? You can play the biggest hit on the planet, and for some people it's defining and for some people it's not. But Daft Punk was sort of in between the two times, right? They were still this, mega hit, right? That almost everyone should know, but I feel like not everyone, right?
I would occasionally like bump into, like, I remember we showed Interstellar 5555 at RIT Anime. And
a lot of people don't know all the oeuvre.
Oh, right? No, but I remember there were a few people, there was a conversation with some of the freshmen who had no idea who Daft Punk was at all.
Sure. But if you play one more time, it's like people largely know what song that is.
Or they're like, oh, right? Oh yeah, it's that song. I've heard that song.
They know that song, yeah. But also, right, is like, just culturally, right, the Daft Punk music was not only, it's like the music of the internet people, right, especially in the early 2000s, but also the music that followed, like almost all the music I listen to today. It's like Daft Punk is like the #1 influence of that music, right? There is not a time, I can't even remember. I think there's some kind of secret DJ law that like if you don't play at least one Daft Punk track in your set, you go to DJ jail, right? I cannot remember the last time I heard any DJ not play just at least one Daft Punk song, right? And there's literally no other musical.
I remember using even in anime music nights at RIT, I used Interstellar 5555 as my excuse to play some Daft Punk when I was supposed to be playing like anime openers.
Right. And it's like, they're just the deal that they were and the aesthetic that they had, especially, not just the music itself, right? Was just pretty much, right in the nerd wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So, they ended, right? There's no more Daft Punk, right?
Yep.
They already haven't released anything really since the Tron OST. And really before that, Random Access Memories is really the last Daft Punk thing,
yeah.
Right? They haven't done anything. They've collaborated on a few tracks.
And you know what? They didn't have to. They made their mark. Like, I will never fault anyone who retires with their millions.
I had infinite patience, right? I'm like, listen, you can't put anything out unless you top what you already did, and that's basically an impossible task. I basically had no expectation they would ever do anything again.
Yeah.
And if they were going to do something again, I was willing to wait until I was like an old man. I'm like, take as long as you want, French dudes, And yeah, so they officially said they're done, which is basically... my personal reaction is because like I wasn't expecting you to ever release anything anyway. Being officially done is no big deal, right? What difference does it make?
Nope. But it is sort of an end of an era. Like it ends that speculation of the occasional thought of, I wonder what Daft Punk are up to. Nothing? Oh, okay.
I think it has, though, in a way, by ending it, they are sort of reviving, right? It's like suddenly, whether people know them or not, it's like, there's now a big boom in interest in them that they've ended, right? Which is sort of like...
After I heard the news, I just put on, basically just a playlist of every album in chronological order.
I would love to see... I should go check, like, the Google Trends graph, right? Or the... I wish you could get that for Spotify. You could probably see, like...
Because, goddamn, harder, better, faster, stronger. Like, that fucking song.
Pun intended, around the world, you would see this of... Daft Punk listens. They probably made a ton of money by ending it because there's so many streams. I don't expect, I said this on the internet in all the different places, but I don't expect them to come back. I don't demand, I don't, I hope obviously that they come back and do something else.
I hope for a lot
But
of things.
I have no expectation whatsoever. And I, in fact, think the odds of them doing anything else from here on out are very, very low. I would never bet that you're going to hear more from them ever.
Yep.
But a tiny piece of me is like saying, you know what? What they're doing here, right, is like, look, they ended, right? That gets you publicity. They know that. They're not stupid, right? People always search for the celebrity after they died. The obituary comes out, right? The prices go up. They know that. They're not stupid. This could be a ploy, a marketing ploy, where you end it and then you come back as something new, right? It's like, yeah, Daft Punk is over. We're now something else, right? New branding, new thing, right? New kind of music. Who knows? Might not even be music. And that's the move. That's a move they could make. I'm not betting on that move.
Yep.
I'm not predicting that move. I'm not expecting that move. But if that move happens, just because I think that is such a...
You'll hear Scott on GeekNights saying, I fucking told you all.
Right. Because I thought of that move.
Nostradamus here.
Sure that on the 1.001% chance that happens, I called it.
So in some gaming news, so it's already at almost $1 million. It started today. The Root Kickstarter for the next expansion, the Marauder expansion, is literally $852,000 and 10,000 backers as of when we talked about this. I think it was at about $400,000 when I backed it. This is the next expansion to Root.
The final expansion.
I mean, final .avi paren 1 close paren. But
Root is gonna disband after this, like Daft Punk did.
The next faction is Daft Punk.
Yeah, sure.
But this expansion is interesting. Not that they're all interesting. It sucks because they're not getting a lot of play because the online implementation by Direwolf, which is fantastic, still only has the base game. Like, I would pay a lot of money if it could somehow get them to start implementing these expansions faster online.
The digital route is as much as I enjoy Root, all the roots, the digital route is the only route I'm personally going to own, because if I'm going to play it, I'm always going to be playing it with someone else who owns all the expansions.
And I own all the expansions.
Right, so what do I need to own it for?
So did Judith and Natalie.
I'm with Oath. Oath is coming for me. I'll be the Oath guy.
You can be the Oath guy, because I need to play Oath, but I got to play it with someone else. You can be Oath, and you'll be Oath.
Oath is already kickstarted. It's on its way.
Keeper of the Oath. So
I guess it's eventually on its way.
They've added 2 new factions that look really fun. They've also added a bunch of basically like hirelings or like mini factions that can fill the board with stuff to interact with, like the Riverfolk Flotilla or some prophets that you can use to sort of mess with the board while you're playing, like add some spice to the game if you're starting to get stale on some of the factions you've already played and know and love. They also gave us a use for that bear token that was in the original game.
Yeah.
He is the outcast. The only thing I'm not super interested in is they're also adding mechanized versions of a bunch more factions for if you want to play the game physically but don't have enough people to play the game and you want like a paper AI to run the otters or the lizards or something.
I mean, listen, I empathize with that, right? When I was a kid, I had Axis and Allies, right? It's like I was a nerd who wanted to play board games like a Battletech, and I didn't play those until barely played them until I brought them to RIT where they were nerds, right? So I feel for those nerds who love board games, have board games, they just want to play Root so damn bad, and they just don't have people to play it with, right? You know how many
times I read the D&D rules cyclopedia before I could get a game going?
Exactly. Even if they're not that guy, they just don't have people where they are, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't. And so that is, making these the trend. It's an increasing trend, definitely, of solo playable games with some sort of, clockwork or whatever mechanism for simulating another player. Whereas if you were playing digitally, like Digital Carcassonne, Digital Race for the Galaxy, you just have AI players. You don't need that, right? But physical board game, I support that. But also, even in the COVID times, right? You think I would finally need that, and I almost considered, maybe, but no, I have people to play with. I don't personally need that, so I have no interest in them, for myself.
But the cool thing is the way the Kickstarter is structured, you can back everything but that if you want.
Yeah, I mean, it's good on them for recognizing that, like, yeah, some people have people to play with and don't need to. Why should they spend money on that part they're never going to use?
Yeah, I feel like at some point we'll talk about that concept, like the paper AIs. Like that could easily be a whole Geek Nights episode.
Yeah, I think the problem is we just haven't, since we have no personal need or interest in them, we haven't played any. So we have to like play a bunch of them to be able to discuss.
The one I have the most experience with is not actually a player, but it's the mechanisms of India in John Company version 1.
Yeah, but that's not acting as a player. Right?
No, but it's a very similar, like, here is a system that acts like an AI using physical components.
Yeah, sort of.
In some other news, The Legend of Zelda had a pretty terrifying anniversary.
Yeah, so this is the 35th anniversary of Zelda 1, The Legend of Zelda, which came out in 1986. And I learned something about The Legend of Zelda that I didn't know, thanks to, I think I'm pronouncing the last name correctly. There's this person, Frank Cifaldi, who I follow on Twitter, very popular, basically an expert in game preservation. And Frank mentioned that, like, yeah, there is no way to play the original Legend of Zelda with the English dialogue text, right? The English text obviously is broken in many ways, but with the English translation and also the original audio as was intended. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. Like, I knew that Castlevania 3, the NES cartridge in Japan, the Famicom cartridge had a different sound chip in it. And that's why the sound on Castlevania 3 Japanese version versus US version is drastically different, and the US one is drastically inferior. I knew that already. Why would Legend of Zelda have different audio? I knew that in Japan, Legend of Zelda was a Famicom disk system game.
That's the key, the disk system.
I did not know before just the other day, or if I did know, I forgot that the Famicom disk system actually has its own audio hardware. Obviously, it's taking discs, right? There can't be any audio chips in a floppy disk.
Yeah.
They have to be in the FDS. And so, yeah, the original Legend of Zelda in Japan, the music, all the sounds were significantly different from the ones we heard on our NES cartridge. Our life has been a lie. This is bullshit.
Well, it's interesting because I think they're both good for different reasons. Like the one on the NES sounds cleaner.
I'm not saying one's good or bad. I'm saying that one is the true one and one is a pretender.
Yeah, but also one can argue one was
you can have a pretender to the throne who's a better king than the legit king.
Stewards of Gondor versus
the son of the previous king, and the other one isn't.
But there's also the idea that you recreate the music based on the chip you're using. Like, you want to talk about sound problems, look at old DOS games. Whatever MIDI font you had in your sound card is what all your video games sounded like. If you had a better sound card, games just sounded better usually. But sometimes
Sound Blaster 16 is the true sound. Everything else is bullshit.
Well, the Sound Blaster 16 with the AW32, which had way better MIDI.
But so many DOS games were not using the AW32.
They did use that. You realize they did use it because a lot of that sound was just MIDI, and it would use whatever sound font was in your
what
sound
I'm saying
card.
is that those games were made. The people developing those games had Sound Blaster 16 cards that did not have the AW32, which came much later.
You don't know. They might have had ad-lib cards in the development boxes.
I'm sure they did probably have them to test with because those were always an option.
But even with the Sound Blaster 16, you could, depending on your sound card, you could just load different sounds into your MIDI like banks. I'm oversimplifying because none of you give a shit about how MIDI works anymore. But
you could.
But basically, if you had an AW32, like TIE Fighter just sounded infinitely better because like the trumpets were better samples. Full stop.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess what stands out to me is that the samples sound worse on the Famicom Disk System, but are also more realistic. I feel like they simplified the samples that were used, and they also like the sound sounds more digital and square wave, sawtooth wave on the NES, but you hear more like samples on the FTS, like that gong sound. I want to see what part of that chip they used to make that gong sound.
Yeah, I don't know the actual specific details.
I don't know fuck all about the Famicom Disk System sound, so I have no idea if those are samples or not.
It's definitely mind-bending to hear the original and be like, what the fuck? The one that I know in my brain is not the original. That's
well, especially because the difference that stands out the most are the bells. Like there's these bells playing, and honestly,
there must be. I don't, like I said, I don't know the details, but it feels, just listening to it, it feels like they must have additional tracks. And they're definitely playing the bells on like a track that the NES doesn't have.
Well, because remember, the NES has 4 tracks, and we've talked about this before. Anyway, I have never heard, to my knowledge, a modern arrangement of the Zelda theme that has the bells from the FTS.
Yeah, it's like, why are, I've heard plenty of like, because
that sample, what if that's a sample? It kind of sounds like shit.
The orchestras always sound like the NES version. Why aren't those orchestras, arranging the original version?
Because I like the bells. The bells add this very like more epic feeling.
Play it. Are they going to play the Famicom version, the FDS version?
From what I gather, more people ended up playing like the later release of The Legend of Zelda, but I don't have anything to go on except some old websites for that.
And then, like, when Nintendo re-released the game, right, on various ROMs and such, it's all, at least in the US, I have the GameCube disc that has the game on it, right?
Yep.
And I've played it on the Wii, on the Virtual Console, and you can play it on your Switch in the NES app. And all of those have the NES music. They don't have the Famicom music, or even have the option to do it. So.
Even if someone just recorded an orchestra playing the song for some future remake, I bet they wouldn't have those bells.
Anyway,
in some other news, Civilization 6, which we've been playing multiplayer a lot lately, literally, we were playing a live game and bitching at each other about the barbarians because we were all having barbarian problems. And we even were opining like, I wish they'd make the barbarians more interesting. Literally the next day, this update comes. Civ 6 is making the barbarians more interesting.
Yep, sounds good.
This is real exciting. The video they put out.
When we play Civ 6, right, it's like I complain about a lot of things, but something everyone complains about is the barbarian.
Now, in a way, it's a lot like...
Every time we play, the first 20 minutes, it's just like, oh my god, barbarian.
Well, it's usually first Scott is like, how are there already barbarians here? Does anyone else see this shit? 2 rounds later, Alex will be like...
Also, why are there no huts? I want huts.
The barbarians have horse archers somehow. What the fuck?
Yeah, exactly.
But I feel like complaining about the barbarians in multiplayer Civ is... expected in the same way that complaining about your hand in a trick-taking game is expected. Like, you're playing the game partly to bitch about that thing.
It's definitely the same vibes.
But the update is actually really fascinating, and you can watch this video that'll tell you all the details. But basically, the barbarians will be parts of separate clans, and you don't have to destroy them. You can basically help them or hinder them. If you help them, they eventually become a city-state. And if you hinder them, you can destroy them and war with them like normal. But you can also do stuff like pay them to go attack someone else. Or
that's what I want.
Pay them to buy back your settler.
Mm-hmm.
The coolest...
Yeah, before this expansion hits, right, what I've been doing more recently is like, you know what? Screw it. If barbarians are a thing, I'm just going to build extra warriors.
Yeah.
And I'm going to treat I've been treating the barbarians not as like an annoying thing, like go away, you're bothering me, but as, oh, barbarians, that means you have a camp full of gold that I will take with my extra warriors, and the money I get makes up for the extra warriors I built.
Oh, in our current game, I'm Gorgo, so I'm farming both culture and gold right now.
Yeah, I try to farm the barbarian camps on purpose. I'm like, here's my squad of dudes. I got like 2 warriors and a slinger. Where are the barbarian camps? I'm coming to get you.
But now the barbarian camps have their own health, and you can fight with them, and you can either just raid them for money or try to destroy
they don't
them.
Just die in one. You just can't just walk on.
I think you got to actually fight them.
Boo.
We'll see. We'll see exactly how this shakes down. But because I haven't seen it yet, all I've seen is this video.
Making steam.
Because I know you can raid them and not destroy them.
It sucks because we just started like a cloud game pretty recently.
I know.
And it's like, do we restart it when it's still early? Or...
No. We'll just make another cloud game.
Oh, great.
We'll play a live game with them.
Sure.
But The coolest thing about them is that whatever civs are in the game, each barbarian clan will have units from random civilizations that are not in the game. So, like, the unique unit from, I don't know, England, like the barbarians might just have that unit if no player is playing England. And you can pay the barbarians to get access to that unit.
So like there's barbarians, but Rome is not in this game. Those might be Roman barbarians, and legions just come out.
Yep. And I might decide, you know what, barbarians, you're between me and Scott. I'm going to help you out so you become a city-state, and then I can, like, get you the normal way. And also, I'm going to pay you to go fuck with Scott, and I'm going to buy legions from you.
Yeah, or you see a barbarian camp, and it's getting to, like, the Renaissance, and they still haven't produced a special unit, and you're like, oh, I wonder what special unit they're going to make.
Ooh, give me some Janissaries.
It must be a late game one.
Musketeers, barbarians with an aircraft carrier.
Or the one they make is like the earliest game one, like a special warrior from someone. And you're like, well, these barbarians are about to become useless. Let's just get rid of them. Right after those warriors stop being useful. Goodbye.
I appreciate that they continue to invest in like all this fun stuff for Civilization, because also this update does not cost anything. Everyone gets it, even if you didn't buy any of these other updates.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. I feel like COVID times have made Civilization have a little bit of an uptick, and I think they're reacting to that.
They must have gotten good sales on their whatever pack. I mean, I bought it.
I bought it.
So the sales must have been good on that, and that's allowing them to, you know.
They're also clearly spying on us based on what they keep adding. So if you're spying on us now, just make it easy to turn a live game into a cloud game. Like, come on.
Fix your networked asynchronous play to make it elegant and not broken. That
Like,
should be the number one thing you want.
I would pay $50 if you released an update package that literally just made cloud play work.
Yeah, you must know that the app Player Damn Turn exists and does a better job. You're being paid. They're not. You should be able to do better than them. And also, you should just buy them, and that way you can port everyone's Player Damn Turn games over. The GMR games also, right?
Yeah, or just hire the people who made Player Damn Turn.
Exactly. All right.
Some other news. There's another Kickstarter we can talk about.
Oh yeah, there is one more thing. You're right.
Zenquest with a really, really good logo.
Yeah, so Zenquest is a thing that's been happening at Kickstarter for a few years now, where basically it's just I don't know if it's always in February. I just remember it happening every once in a while. This is already the third time it's happened. It feels like only the second time. But anyway, the idea is that Kickstarter goes like, hey, it's Zenquest time. Everyone make RPG zines. Now is the time. And they basically encourage people to make little zines at this time as part of this project, right? So that like Kickstarter gets flooded with the same kind of thing all at once, and also encourages people to make a zine. Like normally, some people sitting at home, RPG people, maybe they weren't gonna make a zine, but you know what? It's sort of like NaNoWriMo. It's like, it's Zenquest time. Oh, I guess I better make a zine. And I can tell you that there are this Zenquest 3. I mean, if you've got an idea for a zine, you can still go for it. It's not too late. I saw some go live like yesterday. But if you're into the buying some zines, I have seen, this is maybe the best batch of zines I ever seen of all three Zenquests. And I have purchased and kickstarted zines from all three quests so far. I checked my history there. So
we're definitely having this sort of like surging, not really a renaissance, but like we're entering this pre-golden age of tabletop RPGs in general.
Yep. So if you are interested in playing some indie RPG or making some, right? You just want to sort of make a quickie, right? A little fast and loose one. Zenquest is for you. And might I note it would take me too long to mention all of them that are worth mentioning. But the one that I want to note is we did a GeekNights episode, I believe, on the Wizard's Grimoire. The Wizard's Grimoire is being redone as a zine as part of the Zenquest. I think it just went up very recently, and the rules have been redone a bit. With a dice pool system that will make it easier to unlock the secrets that lie within. So Get on that.
All right. Now things of the day.
Well, let me order my Chinese food. Hold on.
Okay, order your Chinese food. Then we'll do things of the day.
Wonton soup, chicken cashew nut, fried rice.
Ooh, yeah. The listener pointed out at its height, there were over 540 simultaneous Zenquest tag projects.
That's a lot of zines, man. It's like, damn. That is, you can't hold 500 zines.
Snorlax's quest.
Right. I definitely cannot read and play 500 zines.
And I'm lucky to play. I'm lucky to play one RPG right now.
Give me the most zines you have. No, that's too many.
All right, guess I can start things today. I can talk about the skeleton dude first. I'll give you time. But anyway, things of the day. So this looks pretty legit. Like, I'm confident this really happened, and it's super cool. All I have to do is read the headline, and you'll know exactly what this is. Like, I don't need to say anything else at all. But if you do click on my thing of the day, the entire story, the journey of creating this thing, like everything is explained. There are more pictures than you can imagine. Like, it is perfect. So the headline of this thing of the day is, and I quote, "This dude built a guitar out of his dead uncle's skeleton."
It's a totally real thing, as far as I can tell.
Amazing. And I hope someone makes a musical instrument.
You think it might be horrifying, but no, in this case, it's okay.
Yep, it is 100% okay. Like,
it's an okay scenario given the facts, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, there are definitely
there thinks it's not okay, but
there are definitely ways this story could have gone that would have not been okay.
Oh yeah, many.
It could have gone in an Ian M. Banks direction.
Many directions. But no, it's good. It's all cool.
I hope someone makes a musical instrument out of my skeleton.
That would be awesome.
After I am dead. So what do you got?
So in line with our Zelda 1 news, right? I have learned recently that, the Super Nintendo, we all know that in the Super Nintendo, there were certain chips that could be in cartridges, most famously FX chip.
Yep.
Right? And that would let you make a Super Nintendo game that was, more powerful, more fancier, right? Than, some other chips, right? So that's why, for example, how you had a game like Super Metroid had a lot more advanced stuff in it, right? Than some other cartridges of like simpler games. And that's when you're making cartridge games, you want to put as few chips in the cartridge as you can, save money, make the game cheaper. So, there was this game called Race Drivin', which was the sequel to another game called Race something, I forget. And that was an arcade game that was then ported to an Atari computer, like the Atari something, not like a 2600, like one of the computer ones. Right?
It looks a lot like Stunts 4D Racing, like that kind of game.
Yeah. And then it also got an SNES port. The SNES port of Race Drivin', and I believe possibly all the ports, and also maybe even the original Race Drivin', ran at a smooth 4 FPS. It was not a pleasant experience, this game. It was not great. However, there was a chip that you could get in a Super Nintendo cartridge called the SA1, the Super Accelerator One. It was used in, according to Wikipedia, 34 different SNES games used it, including Mario RPG, right? So this is a real thing that worked in a real SNES, but obviously the SA1 Super Accelerator chip that had the chip itself in the cartridge had 10.74 megahertz clock speed. The chip in the Super Nintendo had like a 4 megahertz clock speed, right? So you could really make a fancy game if you put this chip into your Super Nintendo cartridge. So there's a it even says, they're even mentioned on Wikipedia, even though my thing of the day is this YouTube video from their YouTube channel. This person has a Wikipedia mention under the SA1 chip listing. Brazilian ROM hacker Vitor Vilela, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Vitor, has created ROM patches for Contra 3, Gradius 3, Mario World Super R-Type, and Race Driving. All of these games are games that are notoriously laggy on a Super Nintendo. If you've played any of them, you know these are laggy games in certain scenarios, or perhaps like Race Driving, always. But if those cartridges had SA1 chips in them, which they don't, but if they did, you could have programmed those games in such a way to not be laggy, right?
Yeah, and in an emulator, you can just tell the ROM, assume this chip is there.
Exactly. If you're using an emulator or even just one of those flash cartridges you put into a Super Nintendo and then load ROMs into, that chip is effectively always there. You just have to write the ROM to, look for it and to tell the emulator that, yes, I'm a cartridge with that chip. Yes. So this ROM hacker in Brazil, basically hacked these ROMs and changed them and recoded them as if those games were delivered on cartridges that had this chip to remove the lag from them. And in the YouTube video that is my thing of the day, you will see a side-by-side, the original Super Nintendo Race Driving on the left running at 4 FPS, and the Race Driving running on the right running at full FPS. And it's like, damn, I really want to go get this Gradius ROM hack that is basically just Gradius with no lag, because the lag really ruins that game big time. And
that's kind of amazing.
Yeah, this is great stuff. I would love to see some more of this action, right?
So in the meta moment, nothing's new. Follow us on the internet.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yep. Let's get right into it. We
got no meta.
Yeah, we got no meta. So I've played enough of this game to talk about it. Scott's played a bit more than me, but the game's...
I beat this game, and I started a New Game Plus, but did not finish my New Game Plus. I only got a little bit of the ways into that.
I like this game a lot. So it's on Steam, Switch, PlayStation. Like, you can get it a million places. Heaven's Vault is an archaeology game.
Not Heaven's Gate.
Nope.
Heaven's Gate is like a horrible cult.
I feel like the listener might be a little too young to remember Heaven's Gate. But
Heaven's Vault, don't get them confused. It's a vault, like where, Al Capone keeps his nothing.
I feel like the listener is definitely too young to know what the fuck you're talking about there.
I don't know any of the vault references.
Like, we're old enough to remember Geraldo Rivera's previous life. Anyway, Heaven's Vault is a game where you play an archaeologist, and unlike, I think, every other game I have ever seen that involves an archaeologist, you actually do archaeology?
Kind of.
Kinda? The game's pretty unique.
As good as you could do in a video game where you can't literally do archaeology.
Yep. I guess before we get into it, the thing to take away is that this game does some things that I have never seen done before.
Nope.
And
it does some things I have seen done before, but also many I have not.
To the point that I struggle to name any game that's even remotely like it. And
the only game I can name that's remotely like it is a game I played a while back, which is Cloudpunk.
Oh, yeah. And
it's this genre of game that I describe as which is a game I've always wanted, which is JRPG with no combat, right? There's sort of an overworld map that you walk around on, or in the case of Cloudpunk, you drive your hover car around the cyberpunk city. And in the case of Heaven's Vault, you fly your steampunk future spaceship through the rivers of the space-time, whatever it is. Nebula. It's a nebula. You fly around the rivers of the nebula, visiting different locations, right? So that's the equivalent of like in Final Fantasy, where you're walking around the map going from town to town, right? And then when you get to a location, you do things there. You talk to people, right? I guess you don't shop, or there's items and stuff you can get, right?
Yep.
Discoveries you can make, things to explore in the location. All the plot and stuff happens at the locations. But you're just traveling from location to location doing stuff, but no random encounters, no combat whatsoever, really. No, not very much real-time or strategic winning, losing gameplay. It just comes down to plot and character dialogue and choose your own adventure stuff and a little bit of puzzly, sort of point and click adventure puzzle kind of stuff, but not the sort of tricky nonsense puzzles you get in a LucasArts one.
Yep.
Just common sense stuff, right? Like, oh, what will you do? Will you I'll put the thing in the thing where it makes sense for it to go. Do I give this to the person or don't I? That sort of stuff.
Yep. So I guess before we get into what this game is like, a thing I'll point out is that when you start the game, you get a little intro, and then as soon as you're able to control your character, there's a menu you can open that shows you a timeline, and it shows the thing you just did, and it shows things from your past. And you can just scroll all the way back to effectively the beginning of time, and there's all these events from your life. Like, there's a lot of information in that thing already.
Yep. And as you discover, first of all, as you do things in the game, the things you are doing are added to the timeline. So you can see, what the hell did I do, right? Because you can go back to like the time on the timeline where the game started, and everything from that point to the right will be things you did. Right?
But also to the left, if you learn things about the world, like, oh, this thing happened on this date, then it appears in the back of the timeline in that spot.
Yep. So like if you discover that, like, 2,000 years ago, the ancient whatever civilization or the ancient king emperor, died or something, right? You'll see exactly when that was on the timeline once you learn it and you find out that it's true from your research.
Yep. And it's way too much to read. Like, you're not expected to like play this game and like try to read that whole thing.
But you reference it when you need to.
Yep. But basically, while you're playing, the game acts like you already know all this stuff, but it'll sort of like, it uses all of it as appropriate context. And as you learn things about the game and the world by playing it, some of those things start to make more sense or be seen in a different light, and there's a lot of discovery of the true nature of things over the course of this game. I'm being vague on purpose.
When I played the game, at the start, I read the whole timeline because there wasn't much in there, just to get all the info. And then at the end of the game, when I knew I was at the end of the game, I was at, spoilers, the Heaven's Vault.
No.
Oh, I read the whole damn thing, right? To see all the stuff that, to get the big picture. And then throughout the game, in between there, I only referenced it a few times here and there when I had questions about things. Like, wait, that what? And that was like, you need to correct my knowledge about the story. I would go in there and find, what happened and when. Right?
But I like how when the game reveals stuff to you that your character would know, they're often surprising because they like, just starting the game, you wouldn't really have a sense of what year this might be set in. But then, like, you see a robot.
You know nothing about the setting. There is not like this intro really where they're like, oh, in the assumptions, like some narrator coming in, right?
Yeah. It like
don't get that.
But then you see a robot and you're like, okay, there's definitely robots. But then pretty early on, you find out that robots are actually like ancient technology.
Yep, which
like,
we love.
They don't make robots anymore, probably.
They can fix them, but they don't really make them.
Yep. And you start to learn that this is a far future, like Dune-esque far future universe of like transhuman nonsense. Again, being vague because I don't want to spoil anything. But this is a far future where a lot of things are implied that have startling consequences and startling ramifications.
So the way the game plays out is you walk around and you can talk to people. And when you talk to people, there are dialogue choices. And those dialogue choices are basically, you're doing choose your own adventure. You're going to get different things happening based on what you choose. And like, you can't go back and undo your choices.
But here's the difference. Most games like that, it'll be like, do you kill the innocent child or do you save them? And like, there's a dialogue and you pick one of the two options. This game, like, stuff is happening all the time. Like, you're trying to pilot your stupid ship and the robot's like talking to you and he'll like ask a question and then you have to like decide, do I answer his question or do I like start a different conversation? But that happens while you're doing this thing to pilot the ship around. So if you're like ignoring the robot in the real world to play the game, your character ignores the robot in the game, and that matters.
Yeah, it matters. I think what matters more is like, for example, there's a religion in the game called the Loop, right? Which is a thing. And like at some point, characters will be like, oh, do you believe in the loop, right? And, they're totally chill. They're not like, unaccepting of people who don't believe, they're not like, anything like that. But you can be like, yes or no. And then later, the characters, that matters, right? Later on, you'd be like, I know you don't believe in the whatever, but, it's like, it's a permanent decision that you've made, and you can't change that decision unless you play the game again.
Yep. Like instead of a small number of very, very important decisions that are very clear, like the game will go this direction now, it's more like there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of more natural decisions that guide how all the characters interact with each other and how they perceive your character as the game goes on.
Mm-hmm. So very early in the game, right? I was talking with Rim about this part. It's just a really illustrative moment. There is a place you end up, and there's like a box you want to open because you're doing archaeology. You want to know what's in the box, right?
Yep.
And there are several ways to open the box, right? You can get the robot to open the box. You can like smash it open. You can not open it at all. You can just leave it. You can use like this. You can find like a tool to open it with, right? Or a different tool to open it with, perhaps a tool of archaeological value that might break when you try to open it with this tool, right? And like these are just normal decisions. These aren't like, point and click adventure kind of stuff where it's like, oh, which thing do I have to use? Oh, I got to use the hammer on the hamster to open up the microwave or some nonsense, right? It's like, yeah, just, do you want to open up what do you want to do? Right. And the choice there has serious repercussions throughout the whole rest of the game.
Yep.
Right. So it's like super choose your own adventure, but it's like a choose your own adventure book doesn't have that many choices in it really, and that many endings.
This has so many small choices that add up.
There's so many small choices that matter in different threads. And what happens is, even though at the end, like the big plot only has so many endings, right? All the different threads weave together to create a different cloth, right? So when you finally when you finish a play of the game, your woven cloth of all the different threads and choices you made will be dramatically different each time, and you have to play this game several times to discover all the possible, things that could be.
Yep.
Right?
And the choices are usually all very nuanced and interesting. They're not the like, this is the good one, this is the bad one, this is the weird one that so many games have.
All difficult choices usually.
Like a character is kind of annoying, and if you kind of don't pay attention to him, he picks up on that, and then his relationship with you is different.
Yep.
Or if you engage with him, the relationship's different. Like even very early on, I had a moment where there's a character on that first moon where I'm looking for the guy, and there's a character who's like weirdly hostile, like the bald guy. So I kind of follow him, and I keep talking to him, and I eventually get him to tell me a bunch of information, but it definitely like left a vibe, and I want to play the game again already just to interact with that situation, as minor as it is, very differently, and see how different the game goes. Or like, you can just go anywhere. You can go try to find stuff before you're ready. You can just, fuck this mission, I'm going to go back home and like go to my hometown. Like, I don't even care about this.
You as soon as you leave that first place you start at the school or whatever, right, on the main capital planet of the nebula, right, you get in your little flying river boat thing, and you can go anywhere in the whole nebula that you can get to. You can just go and explore whatever the heck you want to do. You're totally free, right? You don't have, someone calls you and you don't have to do it. Right? You can do, there's no like set plot you have to follow.
Yep.
Right? You can just be whatever you want to be. So we've talked about all this choose your own adventure part, and there's also this sort of flying around the nebula part, right? Overworld part. But the biggest part of this game, what makes this game, like better than the Cloud Punk game, not that the Cloud Punk game is bad. The Cloud Punk game is really good. But like, this is like some revolutionary, amazing game, is the language part. So,
oh my God, I love this part of the game.
There is there's a whole article on Gama Sutra. I think that's where the article is. There's an article that's like how they came up with this language, right? It talks about the design process, how they did this. They invented a written language that does not exist, that looks generically, ancient, right? Of swirls and hash marks, like you could imagine this kind of writing on a Rosetta Stone or something like that, right? Of another world. And throughout the game, you don't speak this language, right? And no one really, some people can sort of speak it and write it, but like there's a guy in the library who kind of knows some of it a little bit. He helps
The
you
game
out.
makes an interesting point at one spot along the way about how this ancient language feels like it was meant to be written down but never read.
Yep. So you, as you're doing archaeology, right, by accident or on purpose, and you find things, you find this writing on lots of objects and places and written on walls and all over the place as you're going around the nebula. And all these is, like the current people who are alive don't use this language, written or spoken. They use, whatever your language you're playing the game in is. I assume you can play this game in not English. I didn't actually check.
We'll get to that in a minute because there are some problems with the game.
Yeah. But if you go to some abandoned, rock somewhere and there's like a ruins, all the stuff in the ruins is written in this language. And every time you encounter some of the language, right, you try to interpret it. And the way you interpret it is by, okay, what is the thing that I found, right? It's a piece of clothing, right? And then, so what's written on it must make sense for something to be written on a piece of clothing, right? It wouldn't say something like,
Yep.
I don't know, set me on fire, please. Right? It's like, that's not
Be sure to drink your Ovaltine.
Right, exactly. So with the context of what the item is, plus the language you already know from other items, right?
Plus inferences with characters that look similar that you recognize from other words you know. Plus words you already 100% figured out and are locked in.
Yep. So you combine these things together and you sort of learn, right? Oh, well, if that said that, then this must say this. And you drag and drop the pieces of language basically to sort of like fill in, right, the words. And it's this amazing system of like you're learning this language, ancient language, as someone who didn't know any of it. And that's sort of the best video game approximation that at least, I don't know if can be, but has ever been. And I can't imagine a better one for how actual archaeologists would learn an ancient language, that no living person knows.
I particularly enjoy how you can sort of intelligently figure some of this out pretty well early on, but also you can make plausible but completely wrong translations that kind of inform how your character interacts with the world. And then that might get changed later when you learn a better translation. And it has a nice system where it'll show a question mark next to words that you have locked in before, but the game has not confirmed are 100% true, versus words that you have authoritatively translated.
Yep. And then you can go back at any time and you can go look at like all the scripts, right, that you haven't solved. And it's like, well, you know what? I've learned a whole lot. There was that one long script I never solved, right? But I've learned a lot since then. Let me go back. And you can go back and open up the menu and try to solve all the ones that you missed. There's like a little filter at the top. Where you can be like, solved, yet to be solved, right? Can possibly solve, can't possibly solve. And you can basically go to the unsolved and can be solved list and sort of, churn through them to learn more of the language. And as you get to late in the game, there are some long, complicated scripts and new symbols. And if you can translate them, that is very helpful and informative. And if you can't, well, you can't.
Another system the game has that I really appreciate is you can just go anywhere to try to find stuff, and stuff is there. But you can, based on data your character finds, like information you uncover, you can infer specific locations of interest with varying degrees of specificity. Anyway.
Well, it's, for example, you'll find something and you'll be like, this looks like it came from that site, right? And it's like a site you've been to. Well, that means the date of this object must be from around this date, because that's how old that site was. And that means that people from that site traveled to this location I'm in now, right? So there must be some relation between the two sites.
Or you might infer that there is a site to visit in like this part of the nebula, and it'll kind of show it outlined as a big area in the map. You could just head straight there and fly around on your own and try to find something, but you can find other evidence that pieces together a puzzle to almost triangulate a more specific location.
When you
And
look at the map, there'll be these big blobs, and it's like, yep, there's a site. The site from that item is somewhere in this blob, but as you get more items from that site, the blob shrinks, and then eventually you can travel there very easily because you know where to look.
Yep, but you might have a sense of urgency or just say fuck it and head to an area where you haven't gotten it completely narrowed down yet and still find it or find other interesting things along the way. But it's kind of, again, like the game, all these mechanics together give the game almost like movie beats. Like the story feels like it progresses pretty naturally, and your character's actions feel very natural because they reflect what you've been like putting into this character by making those little micro decisions along the way.
Yep. So my favorite part of the game is, I think the comparison I make is in Zelda. I think it was Twilight Princess. There's a part of the game where you find like this ancient, Triforce temple in the woods or something, right? And when I played that, not that Twilight Princess is amazing, it's all right, it's good. But when I found that temple, I got like these deep feelings of like, oh, I found the secret place, right? Of like, this awesome ancient place you've discovered all alone in the woods, right? Like, you busted into the hidden temple, or you stuff, that kind of feeling, right? Of like, this is a really important, amazing place I've discovered. I'm alone here. There's just this certain, feeling of awe and whatnot that goes with that, right? And in this game, I get that feeling literally every single place I visit.
Yep.
That's not populated by human characters.
Like I ignored another character a bunch and like actually missed dialogue because I was so focused on like poking at the stuff I found on a site that I was visiting.
Yeah, it's like every site I find is like, holy shit, look at this place, right? And it's like amazing. Every single one of them feels like I found. It's like every single site feels like I found the terrible secret of space, just like over and over.
Like, oh, here's an abandoned asteroid. There's nothing. Why the fuck is there a house? Why is there a house? What the fuck?
What is in this house? Oh my god! It's like, what is you're just.
And the fact that
these
Scott and I had very, very different experiences with very, very early parts of the game is what fascinates me the most.
Oh yeah, so. The negative thing about this game,
there's a few negatives. So one, the game has some technical problems. My controllers didn't fucking work with it at all. Like it shows the controller down.
Mine had no problem.
So my controller didn't work. And I Googled, it seems like half the people who play this game, their controllers just work. And half the people who play the game, controllers get detected, but there's no input at all. And if you reinstall the game, it fixes it.
Okay.
Like it's a very specific problem that is common, and I encountered it.
You want to play this with a game? It's a gamepad game, by the way.
Mouse and keyboard works fine though.
It does, but I think you want the gamepad as a smooth.
Yeah, but
experience.
problem the second, the controls are not in any way customizable, except you can invert the y-axis on a mouse. The lack of customizability heavily restricts accessibility.
Yeah, there are so few controls. So that's a good thing, I guess, is that it's so simple in the controls, but also, you got to have customizable controls. It's 2021. Come on.
Yep. Like if you have mouse and keyboard, it's WASD, and then like Q and R are like question and reply when you're just walking around, and then you just literally point at things and click on them to interact.
So the thing I like least about the game is the flying the boat, whatever it's called.
I like the flying because it sort of gives me a story beat pause, and the conversations I have with the robot are interesting along the way.
Yes, that is correct. So the way the boat contributes to the pacing of the story, right? This time where you're traveling between places, this freedom of exploring, plus the dialogue, like with your whoever's in your ship with you, you're talking to them as you're flying. Getting more dialogue, and you're occasionally encountering little tiny mini ruins. And basically what those are is you're flying, you see one, you push one button, you stop, and you get one artifact, and then you get one script from it, right? And that helps you with your language learning. And it's sort of something to do while you're flying. But the flying itself, there is no skill to it. It's just like you can't crash. You can't go. Even if you go the wrong way, you push a button. It says like, oh no, you're going the wrong way. You didn't want to go this way. If you don't want to go this way, push this button. We'll teleport you back to the last, fork in the road, right? It's very time consuming. So if on my first game playthrough, and I recommend the same for other people, my first play through, I actually flew the boat almost everywhere. But on my new game plus, it basically, if you're flying somewhere on paths you've already been on, you can just push a button and it'll teleport you right to the end, or at not necessarily the end, but as far along this road that you have traveled already. Right, so that you're only ever piloting the boat manually if it's on new river that you have stream, whatever, that you haven't already piloted on. So you'll never drive down the same road twice. And at least they recognize that that part of the game is really boring, tedious, just filler, right? And they let you skip it, so that's good. But also they could have spiced it up, right?
Yeah, but I do
then
appreciate
again-
how you can't fail at it other than getting lost or going the wrong
agree,
way.
right? So Cloudpunk is sort of the opposite in that in Cloudpunk there's fuel that you can run out of, and there's at least one scene in Cloudpunk where like the speed and skill with which you fly the thing actually matters, and I didn't like that in a game where that had never mattered before. So
Make something matter that never mattered before is one of the cardinal sins of
I gotta
game
get my
design.
Chinese food.
Oh, Scott's got to agree with Chinese food. Let me put a marker in this episode. So yeah, Crew pointed out in the chat before Scott comes back that digital root, one of the things they added that I didn't notice was an undo button. That's key. It's really easy to click on something by accident in digital root. Guess while we're at it, we'll see if it's not my turn in any of these train games yet. God damn it. Come on, take your turns. Let's see. I'm doing okay here. Let's see. One of the games with some listeners. Not doing great in this one. I'm doing okay. 3-5 trains versus a 6-4-4.
Oh,
I was looking at
it came way faster than I thought.
Yeah, we're going to wrap it up pretty soon.
That's all right.
All right.
I didn't stop recording or anything. It's just
Perfect.
been going.
All right, I'll just put a marker in. So the only thing that actually annoys me about the game, like that technical issue with the controllers, like fine. I don't like how slow the main character walks, because in some of the sites, there is a very, very long path to get to an interesting thing, and it's very easy to not bother and miss something. Like it takes a long time to walk all the way up the terraces in the first place you're likely to go to then even meet that bald guy to have that conversation.
Yeah, it is there isn't there. I don't remember if there was a running button or not.
There isn't, at least that I saw on the keyboard. I mean, there isn't even like,
because I haven't played it in like a week or
there is not even an option in the configuration to see the controls, let alone customize them.
Yeah. It does have some problems in that territory for sure, right? If the interface could be made such that you could play through this game very, very quickly, right? If they wanted to.
A lot of it is to make sure the story beats match up and to make sure you have time to get this dialogue. But I guess despite those minor annoyances, this game is worth playing just because I struggle to point you at games that are like this game.
Yeah, there really is. The language thing alone is worth being a game on its own, right? The story of the game and the characters in the game are awesome. Discovering the secrets of the world, getting that feeling of, oh my God, I've discovered the holy secret place like 10 times, right? Or like is amazing.
I mean, even that early moment when I not really a spoiler because it happened so early, but when I realized that, they dig up the robots. Like wait a minute. And then I went into the timeline and I kept scrolling left to see like how ancient things are. And there's a lot of timeline way to the left.
Yeah, but I can say, I got to the Heaven's Vault and it's like, it's really rare that I ever play a single player video game more than once. The fact that I actually started a new game plus of this game, which I have never done since like Chrono Trigger maybe. Right? It's like, that's telling you something. I really want to know what the other things are. And the internet doesn't actually have a great sort of cliff note that I can just read and get all the spoilers. So I'm forced to play it again. And luckily, like I said, you can, and your second playthrough is a lot faster because when you're New Game Plus, you keep your map so you can fast travel all the fast travels that you did before. You only have to pilot again on new undiscovered roads, rivers, streams. And also you keep all the language you learned from your previous playthrough. It is basically impossible. I guess not actually impossible, but effectively impossible to learn the whole language and decipher all the scripts on the one playthrough unless you are so thorough and take so much time and go everywhere.
But it kind of plays the character.
It might not be possible because you can't do all the different paths through the story in one playthrough, right? You choose A, you might discover one thing, and you choose B, you'll discover another thing. You can't discover them both in one play of the game. So,
and like you're gonna jump around like the game. Like I got impatient and missed some stuff because I wanted to steamroll towards something I saw that was interesting. But depending on the context, going there earlier made different revelations appear. Like you'll see, play the game twice, you'll get radically different experiences.
So on the second playthrough, you have all the text you learned from the previous playthrough, and if you take different paths, you'll obviously uncover different scripts, and that's how you can learn the whole language. And towards the end of the game, that's how you can completely decipher the very long scripts, which obviously when you do that, now unlocks different paths through the story and gives you different threads to combine into the cloth that makes up the story of that playthrough. So yeah,
Inkle,
not a perfect game. It's still a little indie game, but still amazing what they were able to do.
Yeah, Inkle made something unique. And what I look forward to, one, this game is great. Like you should play, if you care about games at all, play it just to see what we're talking about. Like
not just a visual novel, not just a JRPG with no combat, right? Not just a choose your own adventure, not just a point and click adventure, but the like good parts of all of those and not the bad parts.
Yep.
Right?
Just this concept of micro interactions in a game having a larger effect later in the game. Like that is something I've never seen done well before. Ever.
Right. It's like Chrono Trigger. Like I was the game where it's like, you didn't do the thing in the bazaar at the start and now you're at the trial, right?
Yep.
And that was a huge impact in Chrono Trigger because what game had done that before?
But it was still very like there aren't that many branches in that game.
Right. And it was only, one small part of the game. Most of that game is JRPG, right? With the combat and such, right? That's only one part of the game. It's one small part. This is like the whole game is that part of Chrono Trigger, pretty much.
But this, like, if you open up to certain characters and reveal things to them that they want to know from you, different things happen. But if you're cautious and don't tell them things, other things happen. And there's a lot of gray area between those two types of outcomes.
Mm-hmm. And not to mention, the plot itself is one in which, many different peoples are represented well, right? The robot, right? This is like a huge part of the game. The robot doesn't have legs. It has tracks, right? And the robot often complains when you go places like, I can't get there. There's no ramp, right?
Yep.
It is a very much accessibility, allegory, right? Targeting you right in the.
Though I'll admit, at one point I didn't super trust the robot and pointedly tried to get away from the robot to look at some things.
No one's in the game. None of the characters are straight up good or straight up evil. It's all vague and ambiguous. And on different plays, you can trust or align yourself with different people more or less. And it's interesting. There's no I usually when I play games with these kinds of choices, like I can just always choose the good choice, right? Like I'm a good guy, good choice, good choice.
Or I'm a bad
right?
guy.
Yeah, there is, like Fallout, right? Or whatever. Just choose be good guy or be bad guy. Here, there is no obvious good guy, bad guy choice. All the choices are difficult. You're like, yeah, okay, that guy is kind of a jerk, but maybe he's not. Should I sell the robot to this guy?
Even the very first scene, like me personally, like Rim playing the game, my dander was up talking to the woman who sends you on the quest. Like I just didn't trust her at all. Like because the way the character like interacted leading up to that moment, it just felt like something was wrong about what she was asking me to do. Like something was off. And that I wanted to play this game again.
That was my feeling on the first playthrough. I felt that way also.
And the robot was like, we should go back and tell her all this stuff we found. And I'm like, fuck no. I ain't telling her shit yet.
I felt the same way on my first playthrough, but then on my second playthrough, I'm like, you know what? What happens if you do just tell her everything? And
yeah.
It doesn't seem bad so far, actually.
But then I encountered the bald guy who, like, didn't trust me and was worried that I was going to be, like, a problem for him if he revealed some information. And, like, seeing that dynamic is just fascinating in a game like this. So, yeah, like, I don't know what else we can say. Like, if you're not convinced to try this game, like, this is, like, why do you even listen to GeekNights? Like, this is the kind of game we try to highlight. Like, this is a unique experience. Unique experiences are rare in the world.
Yeah, this is one of those games where it's like you look at the box of the game and it has like, you know, when like movies win awards, they always put those little gold film festival things with like the little wheats on the side, right? This game has like a whole bunch of those on the cover.
Just a pile of wheats. Yeah. The New Yorker, best video game of 2019. Like,
there you go. Play this game. Heaven's Vault, not Gate.
Not Gate.
Vault.
All right. That was a fine show.
Chinese food. I'm going to export. There's no meta.